I always find that one of the hardest things to do as an entrepreneur or as a leader or just simply as a business professional is maintaining your identity in the midst of adversity. And this is more apparent for those who are part of marginalized and underrepresented communities. I think people have a tendency, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, have this reality that what they navigate is a source of truth across all. And that is not the case. I always challenge myself when I record an episode of I Digress, when I'm speaking on stages, when I'm consulting clients, or I'm navigating with businesses and things like that. There's my own version of what I want to convey, but what do the people need to hear? How is this going to be valuable to them? Whether you're trying to get more clients, whether you're trying to get more money or more sponsorships, whatever, it's not about you. It's about what value can I give to them. I think about it this way. I was reminded of old friends that I used to talk to every day, that through life changes and moving and going on with your lives, some have families, some have this and that, you drift apart. But that core nucleus of what held you all together in that time was mutual experiences where us supporting each other was valuable to each other. And it's not saying because maybe you don't talk to someone anymore that you fell out. The value dynamic changed, where there wasn't enough threads of value to maintain it in the same way as it was previously. And so if you're trying to reach out to strangers, if you're trying to do cold outreach, inbound, outbound, all these different things, or you're hoping from referrals from old colleagues, maybe former coworkers and things like that, too many times we try to go off of what was. And you have to understand, within the same period of time, we grow and we evolve and we change. And so the moment in time where we left off with a person or a brand of understanding their message, their vision, their value, who they are, their identity, could be different than where they are now, their current state of them. And so we have to find new common threads to stand up for conversation, and then additionally new value threads to make a strong enough rope to have the conversation where they maybe want to engage, where they may want to invest, where they may want to pay for services rendered, content created, partnerships, collaborations, all of those things. You know what feels practically impossible? Trying to find a service solution that helps you better connect with customers and keep them happy. It's like trying to remember the name of that one guy you just met at a networking event. Was it Ron? Was it Don? Was it John? Maybe it was Sean? Yeah, I don't know. Just impossible. Well, HubSpot's all-new Service Hub can help in this department. At least in the service solution part, that is. It brings service and success together on one powerful platform for the first time ever. With an AI-powered help desk and an AI chatbot that handles frontline tickets faster. Plus, it comes with a customer success workspace that helps reps anticipate customer needs. And with a full 360 view of every customer, your go-to market team can keep a pulse on accounts before trying to upsell or even cross-sell. Also, you can scale support, drive retention, and maximize revenue. And you know what that means? Better service and happier customers at every stage of their journey. Visit HubSpot.com/service to do more for your customers today. But I think we forget about that. I think we can get to a point in our careers where our job is our identity. What we create is our identity. I think a lot of YouTubers experience this where they create, they finally get success, hit a certain threshold and epsilon, and then they're like, I need a break. But I can't because my identity is tied to the success of the show, the reachability of the show, the popularity of the show. And if I, as a human, take a break, it's a problem. And I don't think that's how we should look at it, but that's how we navigate a lot of things, because most people treat it as we are only as good as our next interaction, because people forget about us relatively quickly. Most of the people who knew me back in the day don't talk to me, don't engage with me. And it's nothing personal. It's like I'm not in the environment. Like I'm not in my hometown anymore. So I don't expect people from my hometown to just reach out to me and constantly talk to me. I'm not in their environment, and there's not enough value threads to be top of mind to say, I should reach out to Troy. I should talk to Troy. I should see how he's doing, or vice versa. And it's the same thing that's applied in business and content creation as well. Most people counteract losing value threads by constantly being top of mind visually. So that's being consistent with episodes, that's being consistent with newsletters, being consistent with video, that's being consistent with pushing out social content and engaging and doing networking events and things like that. But when something happens in your life, let's say you get laid off, let's say your mental health is depleting and you don't feel as enthusiastic to create or to record or to network, and also many external factors, that pulls away a lot of what you would do from a discipline and consistency perspective to maintain top of mind in those value threads within who you're trying to reach, nurture, connect with, or sell to. So how do we combat that when we deal with adversity? And how do we maintain our identity with ourselves, but then also within the minds of those we're trying to talk to?
What's up, digital world? You're listening to the I Digress audio experience with Troy Sandidge. Social media, marketing, storytelling, business, culture, and more. Coming to you in 3, 2, 1.
So the 4 things we're navigating, we're trying to maintain our value threads. We're trying to maintain our personal identity. But then the other 2 things here that is very important is controlling perception, but having real perspective. Controlling perception, but having real perspective. 2 words, perception and perspective, are things that we go into it. Everyone has their own perception of themselves, perception of the world, perceptions of others. And 9 times out of 10, perception is influenced by all 5 senses. Perception is influenced by the hierarchy of value within someone's psyche when they assert with someone or evaluate someone, a brand, a business, a person. You may assert someone with higher value if they're clean cut in a suit presenting on stage versus maybe someone who's just in a hoodie on stage. That's why I do a combo of both. I have a hoodie and a jacket. It's a party, but I'm serious on stage, but I digress. Whatever your psyche of value traits of priority is yours alone. And how you interpret that influences your perception alone. And that influences your perception of others. Some people value money more than other things. So if you say that this podcast, makes $10K a year versus maybe some other podcast makes $100,000 a year, well, your perception is, well, that podcast worth $100,000 has a higher value than the one that only makes 10. Well, what if I told you the one that makes 10 does triple the episodes and reaches a very micro subset of audiences versus maybe the higher level only gets top-notch speakers and engagers, but maybe it doesn't feel as connected within the community group? To each his own opinion. Now, the thing is, that's perception. Perspective is saying, wow, look at these 2 successful podcasts navigating in their own way. They're both generating substantial amount of money in comparison to the percentages of podcasts that don't make any. And they're doing it in their own dynamic way. One being more micro, one being more macro. And instead of me trying to compare the 2 and be critical of separation, let's celebrate what they're doing and achieving within the percentages of those who haven't reached that epsilon just yet. Perception versus perspective. Then we can tie in the value threads. Oh, look, that show is making $100K a year, and some people may be the opposite. Oh, that show makes that much money? Just doing a podcast? For starters, if you don't know, There is no such thing as just doing a podcast or that little podcast. Podcasting is a lot of work, mind you. It's extremely exhausting. It takes a lot of energy and effort. And if you want to scale, you have to have systems and figure out a way where you can be consistent enough to get the value, to get the ad dollars, to get the sponsors, to get the community, to maintain the community, to grow the community, to challenge, to reinvent the wheel, to modify and update what you talk about, how you talk about, when you talk about it. It's a whole series of things that comes into the deliverable you're experiencing. And sure, maybe every episode is a miss for you, but it could be the spark for someone else to say, you know what, I'm going to listen to the I Digress podcast. You know what, I'm going to go to episode 32. Let's go to episode 57. Let's go to episode 96, 3, 17, 81. We will never please everybody and not every single time. And so when someone gives you a feedback of saying, you know, Troy, that episode you recently just did, it felt different than what you normally do. I didn't like it. And we take that and we're like, oh my goodness, oh, it's over. Versus someone else like, hey, Troy, you know, you tried something different. It landed for me, which made me go back to listen to other episodes. That was really cool. No one grows without change. And we as people are actually ironically resistant to change, which is why most of us don't grow sometimes, or we don't grow as fast. We have to find that equilibrium of I'm moving at a pace to transform the podcast, transform my assets, transform my business to assess and grow and get people used to the comfortability, that change that comes with it. And that's leaving markers, that's leaving little crumbs, that's letting people know in advance, being transparent where we're going with the show. For those who know, I Digress was always 30 minutes or less. Only me, unapologetically me. And that was the premise. I'm going to talk about marketing, business, sales, strategy. Eventually, I got comfortable talking about culture, DEIBA, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, belongingness, and accessibility. Talking about the differences of things that people navigate with racial undertones and unconscious bias in the creative space or the business space or the marketing space or in the public speaking space. But that was time with me literally growing up and evolving of who I am, and also what I was comfortable sharing and expressing to the masses. And that requires you to shift your thinking. But did I receive positivity all the way around? No. The first 2 years I did anything regarding Black History Month on my podcast. Again, Black creator here, Black man here. I should have within my own right talk about these things and educate and share my own perspectives. Got the lowest downloads ever out of all of my episodes. Is that a reflection of, did I not do a good enough job? Is that a reflection of my breakdown of my audience? Does it feel like a massive, massive segue? Like it's more, Troy, you're I digressing too extreme than what the norm is? And I always say, for those who think, I want to talk about one thing forever, that's how it should be. I don't agree with that. I'm neurodivergent. I'm always thinking there's always a thread or a subseries of threads that can connect back to the nucleus, but we should explore and venture. I'd be danged if people think that talking about culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, belongingness, and accessibility are not critical to growth and success of sales. Troy, why would that be critical? Well, let me tell you this. If your marketing assets are flat and bland and don't have no color, don't have no meat on the bones, don't got no substance, it ain't going to land. It's not going to travel as far. It's not going to have as much weight and impact. You could be missing out on big dollars by not being inclusive in the language that you use, in the colors that you use, in the representation of the imagery and the visuals that you use. We're always trying to make more money. We're always trying to scale and grow and be bigger. But what if we just expanded the lens a little bit to let more people in, let more people know you're welcomed here, you're included here? You know, making your images more accessible with captions and commentary and things like that. It may seem like a chore, and yes, we all need to get better at it, but just by doing the same thing we're going to do anyway, because we're more accessible, that may put you in the favor, be the differential from someone else. But again, when we're resistant to change, is because of our own perception. But let's go 10,000 feet up in the air and let's get perspective. And then let's make sure that we have the value threads that matter, and we connect those threads to what we need as our nucleus. Science of Scaling, hosted by Mark Rabesh, is brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for busy professionals. Each week, Mark, founding CRO at HubSpot CRO, senior lecturer at Harvard Business School, and co-founder of Stage 2 Capital, sits down with the most successful sales leaders in tech to learn the secrets, strategies, and tactics to scaling your company's growth. He covers things like how to integrate your first sales hire, how to align your sales and marketing teams, how to add a sales org to your PLG company, how to get customer advocates in your go-to-market strategy, and so much more. Listen to The Science of Scaling wherever you get your podcasts. It's never easy to grow anything, even as far as I've been doing now with the podcast right now. To be honest with all of you, I've expressed this a few times already. Hey, should the podcast be over? And why is that? The perception of the value I'm getting in comparison to the energy and effort that I'm outputting at that moment doesn't feel like it's enough to sustain itself. Therefore, I don't feel motivated to continue. But then if I go out of that and get perspective, Troy, you have been blessed and honored to be a vessel to create a show that has grown and evolved with a Black voice, bringing in perspectives, diverse things into the mix to talk about how do I grow as a small business? How do I grow and evolve as an entrepreneur? We talk about our mental health. We talk about the taxationness when it comes to, I don't have the right system, therefore I can't grow, or the stress or the indicators or the success of that, or how do I diversify my marketing? How do I optimize my sales ops? Like, how do I navigate driving revenue in inclusive and equitable ways? Like, we've explored and we've expanded, and you've had the privilege to do that, and you are still needed. People are still finding value. Yeah, you might want a few more reviews. Yeah, you may want a few more ratings. Yeah, you may want a few more mentions just to see if my people are still listening, still vibing with me. But stay the course, because here's the value you're actually putting out there that people are taking away from. Whenever you feel stuck as a creator, as a business owner, let's get out of our own head of our perception and of our reality, and let's get perspective of our reality. Let's lead with gratitude and thankfulness. And I'll be honest, I'm not saying anything, I'm not navigating myself. I think people think that when people get on these mics and say anything, they have made it. I have not made it. I am in it. I am in it deep in the mud. I ain't got it out the mud. I'm in the mud. I'm realizing a lot of the things that I did to be successful, all the things I've achieved to this point, the titles, the money I've generated for the people, in a moment's notice, it doesn't matter when you have different challenges that you face, which pulls the threads of your value. It pulls those value threads, and you feel that tension, and you're like, is this thread gonna break? But you reinforce those threads with the mission. You reinforce your threads with just conviction of, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my purpose. And even though I may face adversities, this is my purpose. Now, your purpose is not your identity. Your identity is separate. Your identity is who you are at your core, and you are called to do that to fulfill your purpose. But sometimes when we navigate, we start a business, or we get hired at a company, we get laid off, the business isn't working out, we're not making money, the shows aren't picking up, the sponsorships aren't coming in, the newsletter isn't growing, the podcast isn't growing, the YouTube channel isn't growing, everything is stagnant. We feel that's a reflection of our identity. And I challenge you to get perspective and get out of your own way of perception to realize it's bigger than you. There's factors outside of your control, but that shouldn't impact who you are as a person, as your identity. And it doesn't mean your purpose isn't still valid and you shouldn't fulfill it, but the mechanisms and the mission and the how and the process to which you fulfill your purpose may be different. And I think when we're navigating that in that same headspace, let me bring it down and give you this full perspective. Everything you're feeling when you get emails that you don't respond to, that you're like, oh, not today, or whatever, just like that. If we flip it and get the perspective of the other side, and like, we're on the other side of the person, they're sending the email, they can interpret it from their perception as, why don't they want to respond to my email? Why does no one want to buy my product or service? Why does no one want to listen to this? Why does no one want to give me a review? Why does no one want to do these things? And we get ourselves stuck. We need to be cognizant and considerate of others, of their perception, my perception, and then perspective. As some people say, is their truth, my truth, and the real truth. I always switch it as, their perception, my perception, and then perspective. Now, yes, there's psychological ways you can control the narrative to hopefully influence perception of others of how they perceive you to be at a higher light to hopefully convert, get the accolades, get the follows, get the listens, get the downloads, get the views, get the money, get the prestige, all the things that you're trying to chase after. But that takes time. But then I also challenge, is that equitable? Is that inclusive? Can we control and present ourselves in a way that leads into the perception that people want to vibe with, but still feels right and true to us, and is still reflective of our identity? No one said it'd be easy to do it this way. I'm sure there's times when people see an opportunity and they just want to take it because they're in such a desperation for money or such a desperation to be validated that they will do whatever they need to do to win. Yeah, there's moments and times where people are extremely assertive. Nothing wrong with that. But if we're trying to be more equitable and inclusive and transparent and honest, and maybe you operate out of a stronger moral compass with your business or what you do and what you create, and that's a reflection of who you are as your identity and parallel and adjacent to your identity, then we got to think of it differently. We got to do about it differently. And that's the part where it's challenging. That's the part where we have to come together and navigate and maybe ask for help or rearrange some things and look at the bigger picture. When it comes to sales, think about, how do I connect the value threads? That what they perceive as value, I'm also articulating it in my perception that we connect and we have a mutual beneficial perspective. Back to my point of being out away from my hometown and less conversations, or you have people you went to high school with, people you went to college with, that you don't talk to as much, if at all. And those threads, you try to rekindle those threads, is not enough to just spark what was. We have to recalibrate for what is currently and see, can we do it again? So maybe that's, hey, you're both dads. Let's connect with the challenges of raising a child. Oh, who would have thought we would ever be dads? Or vice versa, you're moms. Who would have thought we'd be moms? Like, oh my gosh, or hey, maybe before you all were both very high into entrepreneurship and the cares of life and family and challenges and the pandemic and everything kind of melted that away. Well, now you're both prominently rising the ladder in corporate America again. Nothing wrong with that. Or in agency world. Nothing wrong with that. I think we all have this thing where it has to be the certain way. And I, of all people, have navigated all three. And it's like, my purpose is to provide for the family and pursue what I'm really good at to make an impact. And how I do that may be different depending on my season. Maybe right now it's not Troy with a ton of clients. Maybe it's Troy doing a lot of speaking opportunities. Maybe it's Troy working a corporate job. Maybe it's Troy running an agency. Maybe it's Troy being a consultant. Maybe it's Troy just being on the podcast and making sponsorship money. Like, there's a lot of ways to do what you need to do to fulfill your purpose, but it's understanding the mechanism of how to do that. And a lot of that is, what is the perspective of reality here that's going to help me decide what I need to do based off of demand of the marketplace, based off where the money is going, where the money is leaving, and where do I fit in all of this? I shared something earlier about, I looked at my LinkedIn, I looked at my resume, I looked at the things I've achieved. And right now, in this moment, it feels blah. Yeah, I've done all of that, but. Well, where does the but come from? My perception of, I need X amount of money, or I need X amount of clients, or I need X amount of sponsors, or I need X amount of this or that or whatever. And I could be so focused on that perception at the current time, I'm not taking perspective, taking a break of like, a lot of people who've made 10 times more, who have achieved 100 times more, are in a similar boat. And that may seem like, well, okay, well, they had their time to shine. They made more than me, and now they're at my same level. I don't care about that. But just humor me for a moment. We can sometimes be so critical. Again, when I use the example of two podcasts, one made 100,000, one made 10. And we can be so critical of the one that made 100, of like, oh, I'm dropping downloads. Oh, I'm so sorry. Boo-hoo. But really, if we didn't know those two numbers and we looked at on face value of the podcast, oh no, they're losing downloads, they're losing, influence. That could be impacting their livelihood, which could be impacting their family. Like, we don't connect the threads, the value threads, beyond what we can see, beyond our own perception. And then not even consider, is our perception accurate to reality? Do we have the true perspective? And this is where you have to keep yourself honest and true about how you're navigating that. And so we also need to lead with more empathy, especially in sales. If we're having a conversation and someone, for whatever reason, kind of ghosts you, trust me, I've been ghosted a lot this year, but I've been ghosted a lot my whole life when it comes to pitching and things like that. Did I not present enough value threads for them to continue? Was my perception of them being an ideal fit, was that wrong? As I always say, leverage language to launch. Did I not use enough of reaffirming language, regurgitating what they need and validating what they need to what I can provide, and confirming that I can help be a vessel to provide and to help them get what they want? Or did something happen within what they're doing out of their control that impacted their decision to not choose me or ghost me, whether out of shame or they just, time happens, like out of sight, out of mind. You're not the most important thing to me. And that's the thing. We can't approach sales. We can't approach getting fundraising and investments and sponsorship deals and pitching for creative things as if what I'm doing to give to you is the most important thing ever. You're trying to receive something for value output. That means the person on the opposite end of that is in the driver's seat to pay, to say yes, to agree, to partner, to collab, or the case might be. And we may, in our minds, well, this is what I need to do to survive. And this is like, you're an opportunity that I need to consider. And you're not my only one. I've got a lot of other things going on top of my own personal life and things like that as well. And so when you think about it that way, it almost humanizes selling even the more. Because we stop treating people like robots and consider them as people who are flawed, as people who forget things. How many times have you sent an email, you're like, where's this person in this email? Then you do some research and you find out they respond to the email and somehow technology failed you. You had your phone on D&D too long, didn't realize it was sent. Weeks go by, you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't see this email. We have to extend the same grace and not assume our perception is finite truth of reality and have real honest perspective to ensure that we are navigating in a way that makes sense to us, that we want something that reflects our identity in a good light. And this is hard. This is not something easy to do. This is not something that people just learn right away. We are forever growing and evolving as people who are selling and marketing, doing branding and strategy, building systems and operations and communication, both internally and externally, and making sure on top of that, we as humans are good to exhibit good habits into the world. So those good habits can instill, create good systems, good relations, and better people and better businesses in this world. And as you see, when you look at the perception from the right way and gain perspective, there's clarity. And with clarity gives honest direction. And with honest direction brings forth solid systems and processes to navigate things accordingly. And with leading with empathy and grace, and understanding that my perception could be easily swayed. Did I have any bias, whether consciously or unconsciously, that influenced why I want to talk with this person or that person? Again, we're all, from our own five senses, are trying to evaluate not only the value threads, but the commonality of perception that basically gives me what I want. At the end of the day, with my phenomenal relations with the HubSpot Podcast Network, Troy Sandidge has to exhibit enough value that continues the relationship in a way that it's beneficial for both sides. But that's a part on me to do that. And I love this thing from Louise from one of our podcast network. We were having a conversation and he had shared this with one of our team members. You want to look for someone who is a growth partner versus a sponsor. And I will emphatically say the HubSpot Podcast Network is more of a growth partner versus a sponsor. And in the same way, you want to not just be a salesperson. You want to be a growth partner. I don't want to just be a value add to you. I want to be an extension and a value thread to you. Like a stronghold, like we're here. It's not just you pay me money. Can my relationship with you benefit you beyond me? That it's a beacon for other people to give you money or to get PR and good relations and good kudos from. Troy, that just seems like a lot of work. No, it's not. It's knowing the perspective of all the ways that I could bring value to you beyond just the common main thread between me and you. Are there additional nodes and branches of value that we can tie together as well? And I think that's what we're going to in business. That's what we're going to in sales and marketing and creating, is that even with influencer marketing, things like that, which Stephanie Liu has a new book just launched on influencer marketing. You all should check it out. I just left a good review. It's a phenomenal book. I'll have the link in the show notes as well. And I think even with influencer marketing and all the other things, it's all about how do I create enough value threads to grow, sustain, and expand a community, to be relevant in the marketplace, to have enough threads in there that we're generating enough leads, We're getting enough opportunities. We're getting enough referrals. We're getting enough of this and that. Our content is relevant because of the threads we're extending out. And that's through controlling perception of what people are seeing, but also being honest in how we're perceiving ourselves and gaining the right perspective and moving forward. Now, I'm sure I've said the word perception and perspective a lot and value threads a lot, but I hope that this experience gave you value. Hope that it maybe sparked a mindset of like, maybe I need to look at my perspective of things a little bit differently and keep myself honest when it comes to my own perception of things. I need to get that 360-degree view. I need to get that 50,000 feet view of the whole thing and then go into the micro of the perceptions of the parties that be. The truth and the honest truth and the reality is that we, no matter how much AI influences, no matter how many systems, no matter how many things change, we are still, the human mind is a complicated thing. And sometimes what we see to be true is not true. What we perceive to be true is far from the truth. And sometimes we can't get out of our own way because of our own perception of the reality of what is and not seeking to get perspective, and which then leads to clarity and fully understanding of what is really going on. And that requires communication, that requires conversation, that requires active listening, that requires regurgitating what you're hearing. What I'm hearing you saying is this. Do I have that right? What I'm seeing is what you want is this. Do I have that right? And then tying the destination to what you're trying to do. As a creator, my audience is a diverse audience who wants brands who are authentically them, who through 4 years of podcasting and 15 years of actually existing in career life, I've built some sweat equity, and I have this perception that Troy is going to be honest about what it is, how it helps, and maybe even tie it in even more so to people of color and businesses, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and things like that. If that is something that you want to have a value thread extension to be a part of, with me as a vessel or a catalyst to spark those threads within the minds of those who listen to I Digress, well, then maybe we should have a conversation of seeing how does that help you as far as your directive, your direction, and your goals, right? Versus like, hey, I achieved 750,000 downloads. I've been listed as a top 10, 15, 30, 100 top marketing podcaster. I'm a Webby nominated podcast. We do this. We've done this. We've had this. When you find yourself listing all of these things instead of telling a story of value, it deflates you. Woo, come on now. Let's work together. If you don't take away anything else from this episode of I Digress, let's work together to learn how to build value threads that connects mutual perceptions to the reality and have net positive perspective of the truth to see how we can help each other grow in an equitable and honest and transparent, mutually beneficial way. That's the goal. I ain't saying it's easy. I ain't saying it's going to be happening tomorrow. But big things happen in small increments. Whatever you need to, 1, put it out there in the world for it to manifest. 2, demonstrate what you would do, how you would do it, why it matters. And sometimes this is where people get, I don't want to be too vulnerable, but the best way to connect with humans, especially those you've never met, is to lead with vulnerability. That resets the perception that you're approachable. And that creates the perspective that we are all united in this room. It's the same approach I do when I take any stage. I need to first be vulnerable to own the perception of that, hey, I am a friend, not a foe. We're all good here. This is a safe space. And then create the perspective that we are all connected. Whatever we have going on, let's leave it at the door. Let's enjoy our moment from whatever I'm going to share, insightfulness, value, whatever the case might be, where when you pick it back up when you leave, you have a better perspective of how do I approach this thing? How do I navigate this thing? And how do I do this thing? And that should be the same approach with how you sell, with how you market, with how you pitch for fundraising or investing, all those things. I have to extend myself to create those value threads. Without it, nothing can happen. We can't catch through the net if we don't have the cords tightly connected. Nothing will ever be acquired. Nothing will ever grow without the proper amount of value threads. Even in industries, even in spaces where you don't have any ties to currently. When you put yourself out there into the community, into the universe, and start just building the value threads with people, amazingly, they're able to spread and sow those seeds faster and extend those value branches faster and wider than you ever could alone. No one grows alone. Ironically enough, the perception that is you is given to you by others' perceptions, not yours. You can say all day how great you are. When other people around you who aren't you, who are co-signing of your greatness, that's the best type of perception there is. So if you're trying to get good at PR, if you're trying to get good influence, if you're trying to get good kudos, get more LinkedIn recommendations, get more Google reviews, get more Amazon reviews, get more podcast reviews, I digress, then make sure you're extending the value and you're leaning on people to help your influence of your perception be ideal to those who don't know you, or those who maybe lost touch with you after a while. It's still there, but you have to find new threads to build those relationships back up again. And so I encourage you to take the time to do that, to explore what that looks like. And I'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Digress. What was your takeaway? Care to share your thoughts and tag Troy on social media? You can find him on all platforms at Find Troy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review or comment for this episode from wherever you're listening. Looking for a marketing strategist to build the structure, strategies, and systems you need to get the success you want and the ROI you desire in your business? Book a discovery call to talk with Troy at findtroy.com. And as Troy's philosophy goes, imagination is the engine, content is the fuel, social media is the highway, marketing is the roadmap, sales is the destination, culture is the GPS. Thanks for listening.